Showing up 1 minute.
I got 431. Right.
All ready to go?
All right.
That's right.
Ready, Tom? Okay, no, we're good. I will call to order the Tippecanoe County Area Plan Commission Executive Committee for September 4th, 2024. And first on the agenda is the approval of the minutes.
Let's get our roll, sir.
Yeah, like I said, first on the agenda is the roll call.
That's what I thought I heard.
Yes, thank
Gary
you.
Schroeder. Jackson Bogan. Larry Leverance.
Here.
Greg Jones. Jerry Reynolds.
Here.
Kathy Parker.
Here.
Tom Murtaugh.
Present.
Quorum present.
And Gary's here too. Okay.
Thank
Thank you. Okay. Next on the agenda is approval of the minutes.
I move to approve the minutes from June 6, 2024, public hearing as submitted.
I second.
Any comments or corrections? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Next is the request for belated extension.
I move to hear and vote on to authorize belated subdivision extension request S3540, Doherty Commerce Center.
We have a second for that?
Second, I'm sorry.
Okay, good. So we have motion and a second. Kathy?
Okay, so petitioner for Doherty Commerce Center would like to finish up their subdivision. Unfortunately, it expired a couple of weeks ago. So, first of all, you need to authorize the filing of a belated subdivision extension request.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. I assume that's just a voice vote for that one?
Yes, right.
Okay, motion and second. Any comment? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Now we're ready for the next one.
Okay, so Doherty Commerce Center is located here.
Let's put it on the agenda. or
Oh, I'm
floor
sorry.
here first.
Yep, go ahead.
You're fine.
Is that the one you at Doherty?
Yeah, 3540 Doherty Commerce
Okay.
Center. Okay, I just have two.
I move to hear and vote authorize belated subdivision extension request at S3540 Doherty Commercial Center.
I second.
Is there a second
Well, the one I was
request?
wanting was requesting the 8th two-year extension request.
That's the one.
Yeah, so it's the next one, Jerry.
Oh, so we're not going to vote on this one?
Well, we did a voice vote. A
Okay.
voice vote.
Okay. Sorry. Lost track here. Okay, I move to hear and vote on subdivision extension request S3540 Doherty Commerce Center.
That's a second.
Okay.
Okay. Petitioner's property is located here on Veterans Memorial Parkway. It's just about completed except for this little portion right here. It's a zone general business. Here's a look at the aerial photograph and a closer look. They've already filed a final plat that will divide this property in two, so a lot here and a lot here. And yes, here is the preliminary plat that was originally approved in 2004. So staff is recommending approval based on all the conditions that were in place originally. So.
Very good. Anybody wishing to speak to this? Tim?
Good afternoon, Tim Balancy for T-Bird Design, 105 North 10th Street, Lafayette. Here for DCI Development LP for the extension request. We agree with all staff's comments and request approval. This finishes out the subdivision. We won't be back again on this particular one, so we're done. So thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak to this? Questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, we have a yellow ballot.
Unanimous ballot for approval.
Very good, thank you, Ryan. Next is a continuance, Jerry.
I move to continue S 5205 Barnes minor subdivision, a replat of lots in addition to the original plat of Stockwell minor sketch to October 2nd, 2024 executive public hearing at the petitioner's request.
I second that.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Now, September APC public hearing agenda.
I move to place UZO Amendment 113 on September 18th, 2024 area plan public hearing agenda.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries.
I move that the following subdivision petition be placed on September 18th, 2024 area plan commission public hearing agenda at petitioner's request, placed with thereon being without reference to compliance or noncompliance with the adopted subdivision ordinance.
Second?
Go ahead and read it. I think it says
Yeah, it
52.
says 5213 Arbor Chase, Section 6, Phase 3 and 4, Major Preliminary.
And a second.
Okay, got a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries.
I move that the following rezone petition be placed on the September 18th Area Plan Commission agenda.
And that's on the next page. You got it.
Z 2936 900 Place LLC, John Theobald, Centennial's Edge PD, NBU and R2U to PDRS, and Z 2941 Chris Bitch, NB to R1U.
So I have a
Second.
motion. Thank you. Have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. ABZA.
I move to request a variance for a unified zoning ordinance are not a request to use variance prohibited from consideration by ordinance and statute. 2024-13 Brian Morrison and 2024-15 Riverside Construction LLC.
Second?
Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries.
Review and approval of the August budget report. I
Second?
move to approve the August 2024 budget report as submitted.
Second?
Okay.
Nothing unusual going on this one? Happy to answer any questions.
Very good. Any questions or comments?
I move to adjourn.
I appreciate the motion. Stand by. All those in favor of approving the budget report say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Any other business? None? Okay, now, Jared.
I move to adjourn.
Okay, we are adjourned. And I think as soon as they're ready, we're ready for the next meeting. Okay? So we got a minute break.
ADUs. Accessory dwelling units. Good, a new acronym, which is important to add a new acronym.
Larry used it earlier on me, and I, what are you talking about?
They've been working on that for some time.
It's been considered for a bit.
I was thinking West Side was private, which I like it personally.
Well, I think it makes some sense. We talk about having to what's going on there. I mean, you're right. You're not going to put up
Drinking beer when I was
from
pushing 50.
a behavior standpoint, it's as good as it gets.
No, sorry, pushing
It's
40.
nice for some folks.
Drinking beer.
Let's get some extra income.
True, but from a planning standpoint, it's all about business.
56.
There was, maybe you didn't see this, 4 or 5 years ago, the keynote subject at the National Planning Association was equity zoning. Equity zoning. Equity zoning referred to density. The density is what causes cost. So if you have R1 lot, as you know, it costs a lot of money. You have R1B, you take 30% off or whatever. Your R2, it's just all like this. sent that to Rabita and say, hey, Rabita.
Where's what?
I'm not sure we're ready for that.
It sounds like in his email, he has some sort of golf league or something, or is his kid playing?
Expensive, right out of the elbow, and
He's coaching golf?
but for $1,000 together,
Okay,
there's
okay.
less public infrastructure.
Yeah, because he said this should be the last one.
Really tightly practiced. So, I mean, it's not an easy calculation. It is a multi-factor calculation, I
Much public infrastructure, meaning what, police?
think. Everything, because you don't have as many people. You got more elbow room, but fewer people. It costs the individual more, but maybe not the town. I'm no planner, though. I'm sure these folks will tell all about it.
Eric is helping me.
Yeah.
I'm trying to put together
Okay.
an ordinance.
I think we're ready to go. You're back. I need
I know
to
the
see
words.
the sheet on the ordinance.
Yeah, in the lead sheet.
Oh, for motions?
Yeah, or I just read.
No, you just read this. They don't do one for this
Okay,
meeting. So we'll just
okay.
approve that. Okay, sorry, we're ready to go. I'm goofing off. We will call to order the
They should.
Tippecanoe County Area Plan Commission Exec Ordinance Committee to order for September 4th, 2024. Do we do a roll call?
We do not generally.
Okay.
The record could reflect.
We have a quorum.
We have a quorum.
Okay, approval of the minutes. I will take a motion to approve the minutes from June 5th, 2024 meeting, please.
I move to approve the minutes for the June 5th, 2024 meeting.
Second?
A motion and a second. Questions or comments, corrections? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Opposed? That motion carries. Discussion on 3 minor UCO amendments.
I just want to mention, excuse me, that these 3 items have all been put on the September APC agenda. It's UCO 113, Amendment 113. If any of these things don't pass tonight, because we haven't even discussed them here yet, if they don't pass, we will just continue that topic at the APC meeting. So.
Okay.
What makes these minor amendments?
Oh, don't look into it. We consider them small.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Okay, okay,
It's
all
not like
right.
subdivisions major minor.
Okay, okay, all right.
All right, so I'm going to be talking about the ag rental hall definition. Ag rental halls were added to the UZO in 2013. Since then, the county has seen 7 approvals for special exceptions for ag rental halls. The definition was created with weddings being the primary function or event at these facilities, with the option to host a handful of public events each year. Numerous types of events are hosted at ag rental halls, and recently the question of what is a public event came under fire, so to speak. One of the local halls hosted a flea market that was advertised to the general public with 70-plus vendors and no requirement for advance tickets or reservations. After a lot of discussion internally and with our county administrative officer at our monthly AO's meeting, we feel that we've come up with an appropriate distinction between private and public events so that such events or events such as the flea market or others like it can be appropriately held or not, depending on the number of events that they've held. The difference between a private event and a public one comes down to invitation, ticket sales, or reservations. If a person has made prior arrangements to attend an event, whether through purchasing a ticket, a seat at a table, the entire table, or being invited to a celebration, that event would be considered a private event. It is only open to those people who made that particular arrangement. For public events, anyone could arrive and be admitted to the event. No ticket or invitation would need to be shown at the door. Ag rental halls, when they are granted approval by the ABZA, are held to a certain maximum capacity. This clarification in the definition would not change that in any way. The owners and operators are still held to that max capacity and are responsible for ensuring attendance is limited in some way, shape, or form. We also felt the need to add the extra phrase regarding a cover charge in the event that you have events where anyone can come and gain entry, albeit with a fee at the door. Perhaps that's how they're keeping track of the number of people that they're admitting by charging that nominal fee at the door. In this example, there would still be no advance ticket sale or a reservation made, so that would still be considered a public event. If there are other scenarios that you can think of that we haven't covered here that should be considered for the definition amendment, we're open to those suggestions or comments for discussion here. Otherwise, we are recommending that the committee vote to pass this on to the full APC board for approval.
I have a question.
Questions?
Yeah.
Who's policing how many are going to show up or who's not? How many tickets are going to be sold? Who's going to be?
That is up to the individual owner-operator of the ag rental hall. They are responsible for ensuring that only the number of people that they're allowed to have are there. Enforcement is done as other enforcement here in the county is done for ordinance. It's through complaints.
Okay.
But even if, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, I can rent the hall for my wedding, and tell you that I'm going to have 300 people, but you have no idea who's coming as my guest. And I don't know until they've RSVP'd maybe a week before or two for food, or whatever the requirement is. So in that scenario, you're still not going to know who's coming. It's just that you have me as the source of contact that's leased the facility.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, that's...
So I don't see how that's kind of different from a public where, you know, if it's public and somebody's buying tickets or an entrance to get in my mind, you still in either situation don't know who the ticket holder is, so to speak, or who's coming to the event.
Sure, sure. But if you're having a wedding at an event center and you know that you're going to be inviting 300 people, it's, I believe, up to the bride to make sure, or the person who's reserving that hall to make sure that that hall can accommodate all their guests. And honestly, that's not under question here. The max capacity is set by the ABZA. We're just trying to clarify the public versus private event here.
But in the situation that you mentioned, both of those would be private events.
Yes.
They would be.
Would be.
They're suggesting even if I sell tickets in advance, it's a public event.
No. If you sell
No.
tickets in advance, it's a private
It's a
event.
private.
Oh, okay.
Advanced ticket sales are private events. If you have something that shows, hey, I bought this a week ago, I'm coming to the event, that's a private event. But if I'm coming up to the door, I don't have any way of showing that I made any kind of reservation, I don't have a ticket, I can gain entry without showing you anything, that's a public event. The difference being, of course, if I'm attending a wedding, I'm not going to bring the invitation with me. But obviously, that's a private event.
We have owners here of two that, can we hear from them?
Sure.
I'd like to hear
Yeah.
some take from the people that are actually got agricultural rental homes, if they would like to say.
Hello, I'm Scott Bond, owner of the, come up here.
No, sorry, push the button.
It's on, it's red.
It's on.
It's on.
It's on, can you hear me?
Sorry, I didn't see it.
Okay. I'm Scott Bond. I'm the owner of the Stables Event Center south of Lafayette. And to speak to that for a moment, when we book a wedding, it's a year in advance typically, year and a half. And we always, what's your guest count? What are you thinking? As we work with them over the course of a year, we dial that in once they get their final count. And we make sure they know a year in advance, hey, we are capped at this many people. Not that that's in question tonight, but that's kind of how we deal with that capacity issue. So for me, just a clarification point, certainly no opposition from me. This is what I was told back when, in 2018, when we came down and got approval, was that we could do 4 public events a year, if you want to call them that, and it was still to capacity. We had to maintain our capacity. That would be, we like bluegrass concerts out of Gatlinburg. I've had a couple of those inside. Well, they came, we sold tickets, but we limited it to a number of people we can hold. But you can only do that 4 times a year, which is what I thought, I was told back then, and I think that's still true today. And the other events, private events, and there was some question that came up in the last 6 months. We do YWCA, NAMI, Boys and Girls Club, Grant's house. We do a lot of fundraising at our center, and those type of events came into a question. Would that be one of those paid events? Because some of these events they sell tickets to if it's a fundraiser for them, but we certainly aren't selling tickets. That's for us. We do a lot of donating in that space. So just for me, I just want to make sure I'm clear that my understanding is we can host those type of events at our center, the fundraising events, and those I can do as many as I want in a year's time. And we're not selling any tickets to those. They're capped at my max capacity when those organizations come in. But I can held 4 private or public events a year where I can sell tickets and have still to my capacity. I know what my approval was to put that many people in there. And as long as I'm understanding that correctly, I'm good. Unless you all have any question to me, but that was my understanding.
Yeah, the charity events, we consider those to be public. No, I'm sorry, private.
Private, yeah.
You're not selling tickets, but the Boys and Girls Club.
Correct.
They're selling tickets.
Yes.
So not anyone can just show up.
Correct.
So, yeah, that's just a private.
Okay.
Doesn't count towards your pool.
That's what I thought. I just wanted to go on record, so we've had some conversation with some of the people on the board along the way, and I think there just needed to be this meeting, just to have some clarification of what was what. So
I mean,
I appreciate that, and if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
And I think that's a very important point. Should that be further clarified? By private events are limited to attendance by invitation or reservation from ticket sales by the
owners. We can't do it.
by whoever is renting from you.
The event organizer, maybe?
Does it matter who is selling the tickets?
But in the situation that Mr. Bond mentioned, he was selling tickets in the public event.
Yeah, right.
So I just want to make sure that we don't have
Public event.
concerns about that down the road.
So that kind of throws our whole our definition into, yeah.
So you can have as many events that are nonprofits, but if you were holding something for you that you were holding, you can only have 4 of those.
4 a year.
Correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, the example we used was the flea market, where, someone could just show up. There's no entry fee. They could just show up, look at the vendors, then leave,
Yeah,
And
my
so
understanding,
that's
that would
kind of a
still
come
be
and go
capacity.
situation. So those we would consider public events, because anyone can just come onto the site. There's no charge. They just come in.
But what would you consider his example previously? And I think you said like a bluegrass.
Yeah, that was,
if it's a concert.
that was pre-sold.
And it's not a free concert, then it's a private event. It's ticketed, no matter who's selling the tickets.
But I could go to your place and buy a ticket at that time to get in.
Those were pre-sold in our case, because we had to know how many people, because I had to pay the people that came, and I had to make sure there was enough ticket sales to.
Right. That's
think where Bruce is playing.
Yes.
that's
Grant's
always
house sold
private.
tickets.
Through like a private thing, where
That's
someone
how
paid
it-
for that, and then handed out the invitations or tickets if you would to attend that fundraiser.
Yeah, I mean, do you hold any events that are just drop-in? No tickets, no money exchange?
No, we
Yeah.
don't. No, we-
You don't have to hold public events.
Yeah,
but-
sure.
Yeah,
And
so-
we've discussed that, but we were talking about having a deal for a car show for autism recently, so that would
might
be
an
something.
example of one that
Yeah.
would count towards the public event.
Yes. So I just want to make sure that going forward, and I thought we were doing it the way as we should, so I feel better now that we've actually had a little conversation about this. Not that we're breaking the rules, but I just want to make sure that going forward that we don't.
I got a question. If you were holding out for an organization, would that still be public?
No,
I
that's
mean,
private.
non-private, if it's a nonprofit, like an Alzheimer's, he
Yeah,
said
yeah,
something.
that's private.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, certainly. Anything else? Anyone?
Thank you.
Thank
Very
you.
good. Thank you, Scott. Anyone else wishing to speak here?
Berlin Fast, 5074 East, 550 South. I'm with Gathering Acres Event Center. In the memorandum you all received, it states that these open public events are not regulated in any way. All our events are regulated. We are regulated for capacity, noise, hours, water, septic, lighting, parking, signage, drainage, setbacks, and more in order to obtain a special exception. It also states that we have different interpretations of, like we just talked about, the term open public event. That's not really an issue so much for me as the difference is saying that we're limited to only 4 events, 4 of these public events. So why only 4 open public events? Where did that come from? Where's the bottom of that? Let's look at the staff report that was written on April 11, 2013 that goes with this ordinance. In that staff report, it says to limit those places established in the agricultural zone because they would typically not have adequate sewer or water service available to them. We have water and sewer capable of a 300-person capacity for 365 days per year. The new definition does say that all these events are permitted, but then it says big open public events are limited to 4 per year. But then it says the special exception requirement would allow ABZA to regulate traffic, lighting, noise, hours, which they do. That makes sense. So we could actually look at this 2013 ordinance. It's confusing, very confusing. I guess that's why we're here. We haven't looked at section 2 of the ordinance that states, this is in that same ordinance from 2013, this use is, it says this use is permitted in the JB zone by right and in the agricultural zones, only with a special exception. Is the JB, here's a question, is the JB zones also limited to 4 open public events per year? I do believe many sales events take place open to the public all the time. The mall is in a JB zone, if I'm not mistaken. They have open sales events all the time.
Do you mean GB?
GB zone,
Okay.
general business zone, right? Seems to me the agricultural halls are not limited to 4 open public events, just as they are not limited in the general business zone. This would be a good question for legal counsel on this matter. I was told by the APC that legal counsel was contacted, but I never received a formal response. This topic deserves more. So since we're adding and defining ordinances, I'm just making a suggestion here. I'm trying to keep to 5 minutes. Can the APC amend Unified Zoning Ordinance number 109 again to include, since we're on the topic of amending stuff, all agricultural rental halls should be permitted to have brief ceremonial or processional music. I'm just about done here. A bride anticipates her whole life to play that one special song as she walks down the aisle. But at Gathering Acres, we can't do that. It should apply to all venues. You could put a further restriction on non-conforming venues like us by adding that brief ceremonial music cannot exceed 60 decibels at the property line. 60 decibel threshold is often used in residential neighborhoods with houses built close together. We've been told we can have a 20-piece mariachi band at a wedding site. That's insanely loud. But I can't play John Legend for a bride to walk down the aisle in her wedding dress on 11 acres. Why? We recently read every complaint, email that was made to APC. No wonder they were concerned, considering all the mistruths they were told. They have had an incredibly tough job trying to navigate the insanity of our neighbors. The neighbors were recently held in contempt of court by Superior Court Judge Steve Meyer and were ordered to pay some legal fees. They had disrupted 2 weddings taking place, and a mother of the bride came to testify. Judge Meyer cited that it was unreasonable to play loud music over our entire property from 10 a.m. till 9 p.m. for a 3-year-old birthday party. He stated, if they had sang happy birthday and had a loud moment of celebrating, it would have been fine, reasonable. So brief ceremonial music would be fine, reasonable, if a court ruling ever took place.
Are you nearing the end? I say, are you nearing the end?
Yeah. I'm right.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. The complaints have come to a close now. Maybe the neighbors have realized this is serious and they have to stop all the harassment and the relentless false complaints. After reviewing everything, there was one individual that spearheaded everything and made almost all the complaints to the APC, including the open flea market. He has since passed away a few months ago. The other neighbors want everything to be music because of all the opposition at our last hearing. Please amend this last ordinance and allow brief music for all of us. We would still be committed to our no amplified music or sound system outside the agricultural hall. Could you ask APC to possibly make a proposal, staff report for this potential amendment?
Okay.
Sorry I got off track a little bit on that, but
I have a couple questions for you.
yes,
I want to
please.
make sure I got your points. You were talking about four public events, and the other one was just about music at your events. Was there any other points that you raised?
No.
Okay, we will discuss those.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Not at this time, unless somebody has one. I might, no.
Thank you for giving me the time.
Thank you. In your paper, okay. I might make a comment, which I think is pretty clear, and I'd like to hear other people's comments, but I'm not sure the intention was to turn agricultural rental halls into retail establishments, which can create a lot of traffic, noise, whatever. So I think the 4 public events is pretty reasonable, and I think we clarified what those are. If they're by invitation or a fundraiser, it's not just, a car show would be a public event if you don't have invitations, or a flea market would be a public event. I'm comfortable with 4 myself.
And 4 has always been the number. Always. And just mostly out of curiosity, so if a property is zoned GB, do they still need a special exception?
I don't think so.
No. Okay. And so,
It'd be like a catering hall or the fairgrounds or,
okay.
a formal, full commercial operation.
So would they be, what triggers the 4 public events? Is it the special exception or the use itself?
The use
Yeah.
is defined.
It's in
Okay.
the definition of
Okay.
ag rental
So
hall.
it's an ag rental hall, so therefore, 4
Okay.
public events.
Okay.
For example, restaurants are permitted by right in GB, so, a catering hall would be permitted by right.
Okay.
Any other discussion on public events? I think that's kind of this particular case, he did raise a point about that, but I'm not sure we're going to address that. Anybody have any comments on music? Because we did talk about that pretty extensively when we changed that. Final thing for Kathy, and I'm just trying to understand, and maybe it's in here and I missed it. So you're proposing a definition change to the ordinance of agricultural rental halls, but do you have that in ordinance form in here someplace, and I'm just missing it?
Yeah, just near the back of the ordinance packet.
Okay. Okay, I got it right here. I see, I'm sorry, I overlooked that.
The additions are underlined.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ryan.
Okay, and And I'm just curious, have you two both read the actual proposed ordinance? Okay. And I didn't ask, Verna, do you have any questions in regard to or concerns in regard to the actual definition of public versus private? I know, Scott, you said you did. Okay.
I guess my only concern is the last thing that's underlined is requiring a cover charge or admission fee would still constitute a public event. I understand what we're trying to get at, but I just feel like there's going to be a got you moment that wasn't intended. And I don't know. I'm not sure about that.
Because we're sitting here trying to define it all now, and there's always things that come up that we haven't thought about. And, I don't know.
It is tough trying to come up with every possible scenario. Yeah, we did the best we could with this definition change.
I guess for the record, this would be version 2.0 we're proposing. So,
Okay,
not too bad.
I understand the clarification and agree with it. I mean, it's kind of spelling out what's a public event, and I agree that it really should not be a retail center. And 4 seems to be working for most people. I think that's just kind of clarifying what that is, Vicki. I think that requiring a cover charge, it's just, like he had a bluegrass thing where they had an event, they consider that a public event, not a fundraiser or a wedding where one person rented the entire space and then invited their own guests.
Well, I guess I'm envisioning what Scott was talking about with the bluegrass now makes that event a private event because he is selling tickets. Am I wrong there?
Correct. I understood that as well.
I'm sorry?
That's an advance sale. Advance sale.
But that's what he's doing, right?
And
you
that
did
would have
sell
been a
tickets in
private
advance.
event.
We're saying it's a private event or a public event?
A private event because it had advanced ticket sales.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, and there may be, if I may, in the memorandum itself, in the second full paragraph, it talks about such events where a nominal fee is charged at the door, still without invitation or reservation, would still be considered a public event. And I think that nominal fee was kind of sticking in my craw a bit, and then I see that you changed that and got rid of it, which makes sense in the actual language, because it now says requiring a cover charge admission would still constitute a public event. So I think the key is not whether you pay for it, but whether or not you could just walk up and pull your money out. If you can walk up and pull your money out with no prior authorization or notice, then that's going to make sure that you still have a public event. It's not the amount, it's whether you can just walk up to the building and go in.
Would some clarification on that help?
Well, I don't know that it needs it.
Such as an open house. Well, so I'm saying I have Christmas with Santa, open house.
For anybody to come.
Yeah, and as long as I've sold the tickets in advance, then it's a private event.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
You can't just pull up and pay at the door.
Oh, but Lisa talked.
Okay, go ahead. Thank you.
Lisa Fast, 5074 East, 550 South, also a owner of Gathering Makers. I just wanted to have a couple little clarifications. The one would be, for example, so say we're having a fundraising event where they pre-sell the tickets, all that kind of stuff, but sometimes people show up at that said event and they want to be added to a table or whatever. So then they're able to purchase a ticket at that moment. Does that change it from being private to public? Because, I mean, that kind of stuff happens, so that's my one question.
I think so.
Are you saying the majority of the people there would have bought a ticket ahead
like
of time?
the main majority, but sometimes they bring in a couple people show up, somebody that won't change that? Okay. And then also, what about like vendor shows? So I know we're mentioning the flea market. It's really a vendor show. Shouldn't name it right. But so like when you have a craft show and people come in, they rent booths that are set up temporarily for that event. And it's publicly put out there that this is happening. People can come and go to that. So is that what we're considering then, a public event, because you don't know for sure who all is coming, and so we're limiting those to just 4 of those a year? Is that?
I'm thinking
Way I
that would
would
be a public
understand
event.
Because
Okay.
you can just drop in. You don't need.
Okay.
They don't know, you don't know they're coming.
Right, but we're definitely still keeping an eye on capacity, all that kind of, all that, okay. And then just the last is just a little note. I know that Scott was saying that this was brought up when they got their original special exception about the 4 events. We personally had never heard of this until October of last year. So it isn't listed anywhere on our special exception where it says that we have to follow the capacity, the septic, highway, it lists all the things that we have to make sure that we continue to do to have the exception. So I just wanted to make note of that it doesn't say anywhere on our paperwork. We've read everything through, and it, like I said, it came up unexpectedly for us, and that's where the confusion has been on this, because it didn't make sense to any of us. So, okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I'm assuming, Kathy or Amanda, that's in the ordinance, all those standards, it's in the ordinance, so, yeah, it's listed there. Got it. Everybody okay with that?
I think so.
Additionally, hosting public events. I'm just wondering, requiring a cover charge or admission fee, should we say at the door, at the time of the event? Is that?
I'm somewhat sympathetic to that. I was thinking at the
Okay.
door.
Well,
type of
somebody come up with
phrase.
some word.
I think at the door is a common definition.
Does it need to be exclusively at the door? Because, say I buy a ticket in advance to go to a thing, it's $15, but say my friend bought it at the door for $20. What is that?
That would be
That'd still be
private.
private? Okay. But that still, you can buy them at the door, too.
Right.
So it
But it
doesn't.
would still be
okay.
private.
Does it make a difference who's selling the ticket?
I don't think so. Good question.
So I guess I'm wondering if we should, to make it be private, if we should add the word like exclusively. You can't buy them in advance, but you can exclusively buy tickets at the door. I don't know.
We are saying they could buy them in advance to be private.
Right, I mean public,
Oh.
to be public.
I don't know, this
I don't-
gets me nervous about a lot of things.
I understand. If it doesn't work, we'll come back and tweak it again. But
My concern is when something doesn't work, people can put their thoughts through, but it doesn't always filter up to the group that can relook at it. And then they're just caught in the mix of, this is the rule.
I think that's why we're discussing it now, is because I think that there was it needed further clarification between public and private.
Would it make you more comfortable if we just took that clause out? Furthermore, charging where is it at? Thank you. Requiring a covered charge or admission fee would still constitute a public event, just taking that out?
I like it in there.
You like it in
Because
there.
it kind of clarifies what you're saying is, if you want a private event, you got to do your work ahead of time.
Ahead of time,
And you
yeah.
know what's happening. And if a few people come along, that's one thing. But if the main thing, like a flea market, where you're just
cover
showing up,
charge or
or
admission
car
fee.
show, whatever, whether
Or
admission fee at the time of the event, whatever wording you like. What do you like?
At the time
the
of the
door?
event.
I mean, I think that makes some sense, just to say requiring a cover charge or admission fee at the door would still constitute a public event.
Okay.
And I think that,
Assuming that at the door is kind of a general term.
yeah,
So would you make a motion to that effect?
I will make a motion that we add at the door to that sentence and send this on for consideration to the full APC.
Let's get a second
I'll
on that.
second.
Okay, so we have motion and second. Discussion on that. Vicki, happy with that? A little more clarification? Happy as you can be?
I feel like it's the tail wagging the dog at this point, so. I'll go with what the group would like.
I'm not sure what you mean by that, but
I think there's been problems in the past, and because of lots of different things, and so.
Like I said earlier, I just don't think they should be retail establishments. You know, they shouldn't be a flea marketplace. That's not what the design was. So any other comments? Kathy, what do you think?
I said what I thought.
Okay, okay, very good. Hearing none, all those in favor of adding at the door after the admission fee signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries, and also part of that motion was to send it on. So, I guess we had that in there. Any other discussion on, before moving on to the next issue? Okay. Okay, very good. Pets, thank you for coming and your
Thank you.
input.
Okay, this amendment came at the request of the county commissioners. There's something called a pet brokerage. It's not exactly a pet store, but that's where we had sort of classified it before. They kind of have a reputation for mistreating the animals in their care, so we sort of wanted to limit where they could be located. We did have one pet brokerage in Tippecanoe County. It was north of West Point, but that is no longer there, so we don't have one currently in the county. So this amendment would define a pet store, and we're not changing anything regarding a pet store like Petco or I can't think of the one over there by
PetSmart.
Yeah, there you go. But we would define this business called a pet brokerage and limit it to the I-2 zone by special exception only. We kind of felt like limiting the location was a good idea, and it also put it under more public scrutiny because it would, in theory, require both a rezoning and a special exception from the board. So.
And obviously then a public hearing.
Yes, right. Any questions?
I-2 obviously seems pretty restrictive to
It
find a
is.
place.
There are very few I-2 zone properties that exist, and most of them have a use, so. It would just be a,
GB zone, but I'm like, when I read the definition of a brokerage, maybe that's my own definition coming into like.
yeah. You're talking about the pet store that used to be there by Kohl's, for example?
Yeah, I don't know, like, because when I read the definition initially, I was like, well, does that fall under a brokerage? I mean.
It would,
That's
yeah.
what I was like.
Because they're selling animals,
So is this just limited to dogs and cats? Because I want to use an example. Buckles down here, you know, they they do reptiles and a lot of stuff. I'm not sure they're zoning. I think it's GB, but it's, so that doesn't affect them.
I don't think so. We've only talked about cats and dogs.
Okay. I don't think they adopt or anything. I mean, I think it's just retail.
I've never been in there, so I don't know what they...
Well,
You should go in there.
It's really,
It's interesting.
it is. It's very interesting. I mean, it's well organized. I mean, it's been in here, his dad had it down on 2nd Street, right here for years, and where the bank went in, so.
Yeah, but this does just refer to dogs and cats.
Yeah, okay. I mean, there's no misuse of anything, but it's very clean and so on, so I didn't.
You know, obviously, we, last year, was that last year or this year? It was earlier this year. Well, no. So we passed it last year, and then the state stated that local entities don't have the authority to ban retail establishments selling dogs and cats. So our local ban that was passed by the county in both cities, unanimously, I'll add, was then overturned. But the one area that we can have some control, so at least there's a public hearing on any such establishment, is through the zoning ordinance, which is why we're talking about this tonight, and had conversations with both mayors, and both mayors are very supportive of moving in this direction.
Well, I think my thought of a brokerage was like, maybe like you talked about, is brokerage would be anything that would be, like I said, reptiles or whatever would be, that would be an animal brokerage, I would think, wouldn't it?
Yeah, so reptiles would not be...
Okay, that's what I mean, that's what I'm just saying.
Right.
Limited to, thank you.
Or fish, or birds, or anything.
Any other comment on that? Hearing none, I guess if we're happy with it, we'll take a motion to send it to the full commission.
So moved.
Second.
So I have a motion and a second, send that to the commission with our recommendation for approval. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? That carries.
Okay, the third item is a category in the zoning ordinance use table called SIC 7999. And it's sort of a catch-all category. It's amusement and recreation services not elsewhere classified. So,
An example of one in the community is Exploration Acres.
Yeah,
It was
the corn
approved out of
maze.
those auspices.
right. But it also includes soccer fields, both indoor and outdoor, rock climbing walls. Yeah, used to be wedding barns were put in this category before we, in 2013, we separated them out. So, but this category has two categories, indoor and outdoor. We recently learned that outdoor is permitted in more places than indoor, which didn't make a whole lot of sense to us. Because you would think an outdoor use would be more intrusive than an indoor use would be. So what this amendment would do would be to allow indoor in the same places in the ag zones as outdoor. Special exception in A and AW.
Was there a particular case?
Mm-hmm.
There was.
Well, it's not a case, but we did have a lady come in. It used to be associated with McCord's Candies. Yeah, and she has a barn. She wants to start making candy canes, like at Christmas time, and like have maybe students come in and help with making candy canes and that sort of thing. So. Then we found out she would have to rezone to an industrial district, and that's ridiculous. You know, we didn't want that, so.
Any other questions or comments?
What if I wanted to build a rock climbing wall downtown?
That's probably permitted in the GB zone, I would guess. We're more restrictive when it comes to the ag zones.
And like the arcade on Main Street is, probably CB, so just a general business zone or central business zone.
Yeah.
They allow all sorts of
All
stuff.
right, I was reading that wrong. Yeah, okay, I got it.
I'll make the motion, we send this on to the full APC.
Second.
Have a motion and second. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries.
Great. So we will make that one correction we talked about, and we'll have it go forward in September. Thank you.
Now we're into ADUs.
Good evening, everybody. My voice is a little strained, so please bear with me. I lost my voice at Cedar Point this weekend. Accessory dwelling units. So this is just kind of introducing. Okay. Oh, there we go. Where are we? That's touchy. Okay, so accessory dwelling units. We were requested by West Lafayette City Council via resolution number 8, 2024, to research this particular use and then propose an amendment for it. We've been through multiple draft versions that we've discussed pretty extensively as a staff. I think we're on our 8th version now. And we put in some extensive research on this use to create this definition and the regulations I'm going to present to you tonight. We looked over about 13 zoning codes across the country, and a few of them which are here in state. This is a use that's permitted in the state of Indiana. Bloomington, Fort Wayne, and a number of other larger cities in the state permit this use. So what you're going to see tonight is the product of that research. We've talked with, I think, 5 or 6 different area plan commissions or similar bodies over the phone about their experience with uses of this type, any potential pitfalls that we might come into, and the potential benefits that they've created for those communities. The definition that you see here, generally speaking, this would make a residential dwelling unit an accessory use in addition to a primary use within our zoning ordinance. We would kind of break it down into 3 different types of an accessory dwelling unit. Those are internal, attached, and detached. And as you can see here, it kind of briefly describes the difference between them all, and I'll kind of work through those as we go through the presentation here. So this map, I know it's kind of small on the screen, but this just kind of shows all of the colored areas signify the areas in the county where, under the current proposal, this use would be permitted. So I've got them listed at the top there: R1, R1A, R1B, R1U, both are 2 districts, A, AW, AA, and RE. So it just kind of shows you visually where potentially these uses could be within the county and the cities. Some general regulations that apply to all 3 versions of the accessory dwelling unit. We've seen, based on the research that we've done in the previous zoning codes, that it's best to just permit 1 ADU per property. Occupancy limit would be the definition of family, just like any other residential unit. Must conform to applicable historic preservation district regulations, just like any other structure in those districts. The lot must remain owner occupied. This is kind of, this is not something that is present in every ordinance that we've looked at. But based on the conversations we've had, especially with other plan commissions within the state, this is something that communities generally desire, is for the lot itself to remain owner-occupied, regardless of whether that owner lives in the accessory dwelling unit or in the primary unit. And then the accessory dwelling unit can be up to 50% the ground floor area of the primary dwelling, but with a minimum size of 400 square feet and a maximum size of 750. So basically, we have two goalposts, and you've got a sliding scale between those two, but it can't be outside of those two posts. So just to give you an example here, we've got a 750 square foot house and an 800 square foot house. Under the definition that we're proposing, both would be permitted a 400 square foot ADU, despite the fact that the 750 square foot house is technically smaller than the 800 square foot house because of that lower limit. Conversely, for larger houses, a 1,500 square foot house, since 750 is half of 1,500, would permit a 750 square foot ADU, but anything above that, there would be that upper ceiling of 750 square feet. So you can have a 3,600 square foot ground floor area house, but 750 square feet is that upper max. And that kind of made sense because that's the lower threshold for single family homes within our ordinance. So it kind of meshed really well. It kind of called this out as a unique sort of residential use that's separate from a single-family dwelling. Just kind of an overview of each different category. We've got the internal unit. This is one where there would be no addition to the existing structure. As you see here in the images, it would be like a garage conversion, an existing garage conversion, or a basement conversion. It would require that there be external access that's independent from the primary unit. So it must be independently accessible. And then the exterior modifications would be minor. The addition of a door, windows, or different siding, something like that. And then this use, when we were thinking of under what circumstances to permit it, we're thinking of it being allowed by right in all legally conforming lots, including those made conforming by a prior variance. So if you look at the definition, which is pretty extensive, all lots must meet specific standards
For lot width, lot area.
Lot coverage and vegetative coverage ratios. So the existing lot has to meet those standards in order for it to qualify for an accessory dwelling unit. However, if that existing lot has sort of achieved those standards through a variance, then there is the potential that it could still have an internal accessory dwelling unit. Since there's no addition to the existing structure, it's not being added on to, it's just a room within the house or a space within the house that's being converted. On the other hand, we have the attached version, which is essentially an addition onto the existing structure. So as you can see here in the images, on the bottom image it's pretty obvious what the addition is to this house. It doesn't really fit well with the house in my opinion, but you get the idea.
Same color.
Same color, right, generally. One of the kind of like distinctive regulations for this is it must conform to the primary use building setbacks. Now that doesn't necessarily mean the existing building it has to conform to the set, or does it? Did we say that? The setbacks of the existing building or just the standard for that zone?
I don't think we went there.
Okay. This has been the product of a lot of deliberation. But anyway, you get the general concept here. And then the detached ADU, which the carriage house or what may come to people's minds when they hear about this use. It can be a purpose-built new structure or a conversion of an existing accessory structure. So a detached garage conversion or something like that. It must conform to accessory use building setbacks. So in this case, it's not the primary building setbacks that we're concerned with, it's the accessory use, because there could be an existing accessory structure that conforms to those accessory use setbacks that's being converted. A minimum of 6-foot separation from a house. I think Kathy and I were thinking of like a couch or a bed being brought into this thing. You know, we want enough room for that.
We also talked to Mike Wolf about, Indiana code would require some sort of separation between.
Right, I think the standard is 5, but we just added the extra foot. And then one thing that came at the request of the city of Lafayette, actually, who is not currently opting into this potential ordinance, is that the plumbing must be tied to the main house so that all the facilities are combined and there's 1 meter per property, essentially. No new driveway cut. And then, of course, it cannot exceed 750 square feet, even if it's part of a larger accessory structure like a pole barn. So if you have a 3,000 square foot pole barn, only 750 square feet of that larger structure can be used for the accessory dwelling unit. And that's just to kind of keep it consistent with the other versions of this particular use.
Before you go on,
Sure.
Can a manufactured home be the purpose-built new structure?
It could be. You're saying if it could be the accessory dwelling unit?
Exactly.
Yeah, many of them are actually created as manufactured homes.
Okay. And then, are any of these things, is there an opportunity for a variance for any of these? So they could always go to BCA?
For the development standards, yeah, not definitions. So.
Yeah, but like if they wanted, if it's a rural setting and they wanted a second driveway, if highway would permit it, they could get a variance.
Correct, yeah. Right. So yes, so yeah, those are kind of the identifying features of the detached. Just some examples that we could show what this might look like in our community. An example from Lafayette, an R1U district. This is roughly a 450 square foot, the sort of blue outline box is a 450 square foot accessory dwelling unit on, I think the home is like in 1,000 square foot home or something like that. So as you can see, this is a long lot that has a lot of empty space on the back end. So this could be potentially used to kind of further densify or further fill in areas in the city that have that kind of, those open areas. Ooh, let me see. Just really touching. Here's a larger home in West Lafayette. I think it's about 3,600 square feet that has an accessory, a 750 square foot accessory dwelling unit on it. So you can just see how it compares in size. This one is in front of the house. So still plenty of room in the yard, even with that largest version. And then a smaller version, again in West Lafayette on Maple Street. This one is about 600 or 580 square feet in the backyard. Property in Lafayette, many of these homes, I think they were built in like 2013 or something like that along Erie Street. This is an existing structure, so all of those existing garages are about 400 square feet, and they're exactly half the size of the homes that they're built with, so those could theoretically be converted into accessory dwelling units under this proposed ordinance. And just some examples of conversions. Again, just wanted to provide a general overview. The language is pretty particular, so if you have any questions about any of the regulatory language, I'm here. Thanks.
Very good comment.
And I think the purpose at this point is, unlike the Airbnb thing that Westside Council wanted yesterday, they asked us to kind of research and develop something. So we are kind of interested in more of a collaborative type of thing here. I talked with Chad earlier, and you're welcome to chat with him since, again, West Lafayette generated this discussion about what they're looking for. I think Chad is kind of open to, the city's open to suggestions, at this point, before we kind of move to the next step, which would be to try to get a draft that at least West Lafayette can live with. But in concept, the city of Lafayette has opted out of this, and for their own reasons. So if we ended up pursuing the ordinance, we would leave them out. So at this point, we're sort of open to comments, suggestions. The city said they're more than willing to table this another month if you want to continue the discussion in October. So
I have a question, Ryan,
Yep.
and this is on Lafayette side. I know 9th Street, State Street, South Street, several of those old homes have what they call carriage houses.
Yeah.
That's set behind them.
Yep.
And so would this affect what's presently there or not?
Yeah, go ahead.
I know some of them are turned into apartments. And
Yeah, a lot of grandfathered.
A lot of grandfathered, yeah.
Sure.
There's actually a section of this proposal that would allow them to legitimize a carriage house, for example, because right now it's illegal. You're not supposed to have
Right.
two residences on one lot. But with this amendment, we actually wrote it in, let's make it so that they can have a path to be legal.
And for what it's worth, I think we've gotten like 5 inquiries over the past 2 months with these sorts of properties that have these existing structures asking if they can use it as an accessory dwelling unit.
Okay. Just a question. Thank you.
Chad, do you have anything to add to this? As we
Chad Spitznagel, Building Commissioner. Thanks for the time on that. I think staff's done a really good job putting it together. Councilor Levins and I had a brief conversation earlier about how it would impact us, and I feel like the owner-occupied is really clutch, in our city. Luckily, we have the rental housing program, and we do a lot of details on what grandfathered abilities have stayed with the plan. So I feel like the biggest issue would be, on a house that's owner-occupied and has an ADU, and then it's sold, and somebody's got big eyes on thinking, oh, wow, I can have 2 families in here, and that's just something that we would have to regulate, and we'd already have that documented in our thing. So I feel like, the research that Nathan APC has done has been solid, and we're on a good path already to where we're going. So I think, are we opposed to pushing it? No. I mean, I feel like it's good, but we want to make sure that we get this one right if there are some details that we want to keep discussing. So.
Very good, thank you. Any other questions or comments?
I just have one clarification because I don't understand the sentence. On the second page, under transient guest houses, it says transient guest houses shall not be permitted in ADUs. Home occupations shall only be permitted in an ADU if they are accessory to the residential use of the ADU. What does that mean?
Yeah, that's kind of particular. So the idea is that the ADU primarily has to be used for residential purposes, and then whoever's living in the ADU could then operate like a home-based business. But the intent is to prevent people from building ADUs specifically so the ADU can be a full-time business enterprise, if that makes sense.
Yep, okay. Okay.
So, I'm just trying to make sure I understand this. On these ADUs, I'm going to own the house. I understand the part that it's all going to go with the property, which I totally agree with. But then I can still, my family member has to live in the accessory unit, or I can have it rented out?
You can have it rented out. The unit itself has to conform to the definition of family, not the lot. So you can have 2 separate families, one living in the accessory dwelling unit, one living in the primary dwelling.
Can, like we have with, let's say a college student rental, I put an accessory unit on my property or have one, can I still rent it to 3 unrelated students?
Yes.
Living in a 400 square foot
bedroom.
bedroom?
That meets definition of family.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It does need to meet building code as well.
Of course, but, yeah.
Fire department will have its say, as will the building commissioner. Chad?
Yeah, good question. We talked about this too. Yeah, I mean, you could basically have two separate definitions of the family plus 2 unrelated or 3 unrelated people in each each separate unit, and I think, I can't remember if I think we spoke about this at 1.2.
Yeah, my only thinking was that we've got zoning that we're talking about here. We also have building codes where there's minimum per person square footage, which you could not violate, that we have nothing to say about. That's already pre-existing in the
But
building
yes, if
code.
the unit size met what our regulations and the bedroom size met it for 3 people, you could have that.
Yeah, so it's conceivable that zoning could allow something that building code could shut down later. You know, so.
And I'm assuming in a lot of our subdivisions, this will not be allowed because of HOA.
Yeah, HOA covenants are going to shut a lot of these down.
Yeah.
Particularly in the newer subdivisions.
Yeah.
You know, and I think if this is adopted and future subdivisions, you know, they don't want this, you know, for their own sales purposes, what have you, then they'll make sure they build that into the covenants. Would not apply.
Yeah, and believe it or not, we've had a couple of requests in the county for opening up this discussion in some rural settings as well. So, I mean, I think the county will at least take a good look at this as well. But in regard to, you know, I can see this being done and, you know, as a single-family home, and then 2 or 3 years later, they put it on the market. Will we, and that will be a real concern if it's, like you mentioned, if somebody just buys it to rent out both units. Will we do education with realtors about that? How would we?
Yeah, I think we probably will have to.
It
is possible that someone could build an ADU on their property and then decide to sell their land and move somewhere else. And a buyer would want the 2 properties to be separated. Some of these might even qualify for a subdivision, which is fine. We can do that, and then they become 2, right? They'd both be principal buildings. They'd have to meet the standards.
But if it's attached,
Not if they're
you could not do that, obviously, but that would be my only concern, is that, you know, it sells, nobody knows, and then the neighbors come in complaining, and then we have an owner who says, well, nobody told me, you know, but it's buyer beware, I guess.
That's already happening with other instances.
Yeah.
On the Airbnbs that people have that aren't registered, that are being sold, and then certain people start taking a look at it, and you're like, this isn't conforming. You just bought, you know, you got sold one way, which is...
I think this will require some public education, definitely.
Yeah. I mean, it's good work. I mean, I think it's something we need to be considering, so.
I like it.
Any other questions or comments?
So this is only for West Side, then county is not for it, or not that
No.
they're not for it, it's not being, if we move this forward, it's strictly for City of West Lafayette right now?
I would not say that's the case, no. I would say that,
thought that's what you said.
no, I think Lafayette has said that they are not interested in it, but I think the county will consider it. I'm sorry?
Procedure.
I just said I was curious why.
I don't know. I've not heard.
Why Lafayette isn't, but.
A lot of management of stuff.
Yeah.
Procedurally, go ahead, Kathy.
Well, were you asking about why Lafayette opted out? I think their main concern was parking. You correct me if I'm wrong, Nathan.
Yeah, and they're concerned with there not being a public hearing process associated with this potentially. So what we're proposing is that this be allowed by right if the lot meets the zoning standards. And that's what research recommends. That's what every zoning code has, is that these are allowed by right and they don't go through a BZA or some other sort of public hearing process that could make this, you know, pretty bureaucratized. So that was a sticking point.
And what were some of the things you learned in your calls with other communities that have enacted this?
Generally, it's many of them are Bloomington and Putnam County are the ones that I've talked with the most. They're both relatively new. They're less than 5 years old, and neither of them have really seen a lot of interest yet, but it's like just now picking up. Like within the last few months, they've seen a bunch of building permits for these things. So yeah, I feel like public education is going to have to be a big component of this in order for it to be even utilized. But there hasn't really been, I mean, I was specifically asking about issues that they had with this ordinance, and I think I wasn't able to, Putnam County said that they did have a public hearing process at the start, but that seemed to be going pretty poorly for them. So they took that out and they made it allowed by right. So that's the only kind of critical feedback that I was able to gather.
And is it county-wide in Putnam County, or is it just the county and not Greencastle? Or do you know?
Putnam County's weird. I think they have about five different.
Exactly, a bunch of Dannies, that's why.
Yeah, it's the Putnam County, whoever opts into the county's zoning ordinance, which there's like 5 different municipalities and they do to varying degrees. So it's not really a straightforward answer, sorry.
So procedurally, do we do this like some of the other ordinance? We put it out there for everybody. Lafayette can deny it, but it's there if they decide in a few years. We don't have to come back through. They can just decide to adopt it like Westside did with the Airbnb.
Yeah, that's true. If they decide later, if they see West Lafayette's doing great with it, they can decide to opt in.
And we'd offer to appear at their various council meetings and answer questions, and let them, sort things out.
Any other questions or comments?
I mean, if West Lafayette doesn't mind, I mean, I would like to maybe take another month to give it some thought and put it back on the agenda for next month's ordinance.
No problem. I think it's a good idea. It'd be nice maybe to have some public input. I don't know if anybody knows about it, that think about something that we haven't addressed. So, I don't know if we need a motion or just put it on the agenda for next month.
Well, just a question. Did you want it in ordinance format by next month, or do you want another month to digest? And
I would say put it in ordinance
I'd say
format.
I would too.
Yeah,
I think it's
because we
pretty
may
good.
want to just send it on at that point.
Okay, great.
Okay, we'll just look at that next month in ordinance form. Citizens' comments. Hearing none. I think we're done unless anybody has anything else.
I move to adjourn.
We're adjourned. Thank you, Chad.
I think, if I remember right, in Lafayette, we were talking about this. We do all this voluntary, in the historical district, to be a historic